Surely crafting the perfect apple pie filling has got to be one of life's greatest mysteries. Now, you might have that recipe that's been passed down from generation to generation. If so, maybe this video isn't for you. But this is for people like me who do not have that special recipe. My mother was very busy raising 10 kids when I was growing up and didn't have a lot of time or desire to cook or bake, which meant that a lot of that fell to me, which I am grateful for and I loved. But what that meant was that I had to find my own way and I had to figure out my own recipe. Well, I am Amy from A Red Spatula, and if you're like me, if you are looking for that perfect recipe, let me share what I have found through the years of trial and error when it comes to crafting the perfect apple pie filling. Now, the first place that we need to start is with our apples. Obviously, they are the star of the show and they deserve their time in the limelight and they deserve a little bit of discussion. When I went to culinary school back in the mid to late 1990s, the only apples that we used for baking were Granny Smith apples, and for good reason. They're tart, they hold their shape well, they don't get mushy and mealy when you bake them, and I still use them even today. In fact, I used them for years and years. But there are a lot of hybrid apples that are really good options as well now. So the ones that I like the best are Honeycrisp apples. They're a sweet apple as opposed to the tart Granny Smith apples. And then there's also Pink Lady that I love to use. Now, the thing about using a sweet apple combined with a tart apple, of course, you get that blend of tart and sweet. But also with your sweet apples, you don't have to use as much sweetener, so I don't have to add as much sugar to my filling because the apples are naturally sweet anyway. So I have two different combinations that I use. One is that I use equal parts Honeycrisp apples and equal parts Granny Smith apples. Now, if you've been hesitant to use Honeycrisp apples, let me just say that prices have gone down. I know that they were very, very expensive when they were first introduced, but they've grown in popularity, which means that more growers are growing them and prices have dropped. So give them another chance. I promise you're gonna love them. So that's the first one, equal parts Granny Smith, equal parts Honeycrisp. The second one that I use and that I'm gonna show today is I use equal parts Granny Smith, Honeycrisp, and Pink Lady apples all together. This is probably my favorite combination that I use the most often. So let's go ahead and get started, and we are gonna be crafting that perfect apple pie filling that you are gonna want to make over and over again. Okay, so the first step is to mix together your dry ingredients. This is going to be your sugar, your cornstarch, your salt, your spices. And I do this because if you dump your cornstarch right in with your apples, it's going to clump. But when you mix it together with the sugar, it completely eliminates that problem. Once it's mixed together, set it aside, and we're going to start on our apples. You peel the apples. I get as close to the skin as I can. You can also use a peeler if you want, but I'm used to using a knife, so I just use my knife. Peel it all the way around, and then we're going to cut it into quarters, and then with these quarters, of course, cut out the seeds. I just want to make a note here that it's okay to leave this part around the seed. It seems hard now, but once it's cooked, you don't even notice it. You want to slice your apples to about a quarter or maybe a half of an inch thick. That's very important to give them just the right texture after they cook and they bake. Now, I cook my apples before I add them into the pie, but it's not for very long. You still want the apples to be not crisp per se, but you still want it to be pretty firm. I cook them for just a minute with the water and the butter, and then I add in my dry ingredients, mix it together with a rubber spatula. You do not want to break up your apples. I like to have whole pieces of apples in my pie. And then you're going to let this cook on medium until your sauce starts to thicken up. The cornstarch is going to thicken up, and you can see right here, this is when it's done. The apples are going to be just slightly tender, but still very firm. And then you're going to set this aside and let it cool. Now, I'm not going to show you how to roll out a pie dough in this one. I'll link that that YouTube video at the end. But you're going to fill it with your filling. This is the bottom crust. And then I did a lattice topping for mine. You, of course, can do whatever you want. I'm also going to link the video for how to do a lattice topping. I'm not going to explain that here. But you're going to want to brush this with egg wash and sprinkle it with sugar. It's just for aesthetics. You can see when it's done, it gives it a nice, shiny, beautiful crust. The sugar crystallizes on top, and this is the finished pie. It's golden brown. It's perfect. Now, I wanted to show here, so my husband loves hot apple pie. So I always take his slice right out of the pan. This is still very hot. You can see that the filling has not set all the way. I actually think this is very ugly, so I don't eat it this way, but it's still delicious. It's warm, it's hot, it's ready to go. This is how I prefer my pie. It's been set in the fridge for a couple of hours, and it's set up a little better, and it still tastes amazing. But you guys check it out. You can eat this just like it is, the way that I like it, or you can top it with ice cream like my husband does, whipped cream, whatever. So that's it. Apple pie filling is so much easier than what you might think.